Vungmun started taking photos of the coordinates. Suddenly, he looked up, pointing southeast. Look, this place is only a few hundred meters from the national highway where Dr. Trio was found. Following Vungmun's pointing finger, I could see a wide national highway, brightly lit with cars passing by like ants. That was Dong Hai Street. Vungmun found a pair of black leather shoes of a police officer under the back seat. I found some blood stains on the driver's seat headrest, some strands of hair on the floor, and some blood stains resembling dirt. We took samples for testing. When we returned to the office, it was already past 10 o'clock. No Daichi was taken to the interrogation room for further questioning. I saw that the lights were still on in Captain Vung's office, so I knocked on the door and entered. To my surprise, Dr. Hung and Dr. Ngu were also there. Seeing me enter, Dr. Ngu gestured to the chair next to him. "Lu, you've come at just the right time. We were discussing Lao Chio's case." I reported the recent findings to Captain Vung and Dr. Ngu. Dr. Ngu nodded and said, "Lu's findings are very valuable. I went to Lao Chio's house earlier, wanting to provide some psychological support to the family. I also took the opportunity to persuade her to allow us to conduct an autopsy on Lao Chio. The results went smoothly beyond imagination. The family truly understood our compassionate reasoning as forensic doctors." Captain Vung nodded. "This case is not simply a hit-and-run accident. There may also be elements of body disposal. Although Lao Chio was our colleague, we all respected him. However, the more so, the stricter we must adhere to the procedural handling of the case, and we must conduct the autopsy." The atmosphere seemed to freeze for a moment. Everyone fell silent. Although performing autopsies was a necessary process from a legal and investigative standpoint, emotionally, it was difficult to accept. We had performed autopsies on hundreds of thousands of bodies, always hoping they would speak up. Only in this way could we relieve the injustice suffered by the victims. But to wield the scalpel against our own colleague created a monumental emotional barrier deep within. In the silence, Dr. Ngu stood up abruptly. "There's no time to waste. Let's go to the autopsy room immediately." Through the dimly lit corridor, slowly descending the stairs step by step, we arrived at the quiet autopsy room on the first floor. Seeing Lao Chio lying on the autopsy table, a myriad of emotions surged within me. He wasn't just a colleague, he was also a mentor, and more importantly, a respected figure in my life. Dr. Ngu put on gloves, approached, and took Lao Chio's hands. He leaned in close to Lao Chio's ear and whispered, "Lao Chio, if you have anything to tell us, please reveal it soon." Under the cold light, I suddenly saw tears in Dr. Ngu's eyes. The atmosphere in the autopsy room felt somewhat oppressive as Dr. Ngu slowly spoke. "Tio Kung, Tio Lu, in a moment, perform the detailed procedures. Even though I and Lao Chio have been comrades for over 30 years, I truly cannot bear it." Dr. Kung and I quietly put on our protective gear, donned gloves, and bowed before Lao Chio's remains. I focused on his body, a once vibrant life now stripped of its soul, leaving only a lifeless shell. With a bitter taste in my mouth, I suddenly felt a strange emotion welling up within me. It was as if Lao Chio lying there was encouraging us to perform the autopsy, to listen to what he had to say. After returning to the office at around 2 a.m., I slumped onto the sofa, letting my body relax completely. All the thoughts about Lao Chio flooded over me, causing tears to flow uncontrollably, releasing the pent-up emotions. At 8:30 a.m. on May 12th, all colleagues gathered to coordinate the Case 11-5 investigation in the Criminal Police Conference Room. Captain Lee summarized the latest investigation results of the case. The owner of the van truck was an individual businessman named Trin Chi Kuang, who had been contacted by phone. According to his response, the van truck was in very poor condition and frequently broke down. On the morning of May 10th, he sent the van truck to Lo Seung Auto Repair Shop for repairs. Dr. Ngu reported on the autopsy findings. The cause of Lao Chio's death was severe internal organ damage due to blunt force trauma. The time of death was around midnight. Dr. Ngu particularly emphasized the word ko, mouth, that Lao Chio had written and the piece of flesh in his mouth. He believed that the piece of flesh could be a breakthrough in the case. After the meeting, the task force was divided into two groups. Dr. Kung and his colleagues from Team 2 went to find Trin Chi Kung, while Vung Mun, Captain Lee, and I went to the auto repair shop. The repair shop was not far from the office, and it took about 10 minutes to get there. As we stepped into the yard, we saw cars packed tightly, with mechanics bustling around. Inside the office, a middle-aged man wearing glasses greeted us. I took his business card and saw it was written Lo Suong Auto Repair Shop, Director Lo Tun Suong. Captain Lee presented his identification and explained the purpose of our visit. The director made a phone call, and shortly after, a young man in uniform entered. "Tio Ma, check if we have a white van truck here." "A man named Chi Kung brought it here for repairs," Lo Tun Suong said. "No need to check, it's here." The young man called Tio Ma replied decisively. "I and Tong Sun Kwang are in charge of repairing that vehicle. With so much work these days, and since the van truck wasn't urgently needed, I parked it in the warehouse." Captain Lee asked, "Is the van truck still in the warehouse?" Tio Ma nodded vigorously. "Definitely. Broken down vehicles that don't need immediate repairs are usually stored in the warehouse." When Tio Ma led us to the warehouse on the southeast side of the auto repair shop, he was astonished. "It can't be. Has that wrecked car also been stolen or something? It's really not worth much." Tio Ma picked up 2 license plates from the ground. "Look, the plates are still here, but the car has disappeared." Lo Tun Suong asked, "Right, where's Tong Sun Kwang? Get him out here and ask him what's going on." "He was here just now. Maybe he went out to buy cigarettes," someone replied. "This guy, I tell you, doesn't he know the shop is busy lately? Always goofing off outside, then I have to straighten him out again." Lo Tun Suong muttered. Captain Lee asked Director Lo, "Do you have surveillance cameras in the workshop?" Lo Tun Suong nodded, saying, "Yes, we do. The camera equipment is in the security office. Let me take you there." We chose to view the surveillance footage from 6 p.m. on May 10th. Around 8 p.m., a person appeared on the screen, walking from the gate straight to the warehouse. It was blurry, but he appeared to be wearing white clothes, although his face couldn't be clearly seen. "There's Tong Sun Kwang," Tio Ma and Lo Tun Suong exclaimed. "Are you sure?" Vung Mun and I were skeptical. Lo Tun Suong pointed at the man on the screen. "Look, he's limping. Tong Sun Kwang has a limp in one leg, just like the way this person walks." The surveillance footage showed a van being driven out of the warehouse, then stopping at the gate for a few seconds before rolling away. Lo Tun Suong asked the security guard in charge of the camera, "Bak Li, did you see Tong Sun Kwang driving out last night?" "Yes, last night he came in, saying he had something urgent and needed to take the car. I thought he was from our shop, so I didn't stop him," the guard replied. "What's his usual demeanor like?" Captain Lee asked. "He's pretty honest, but he's a bit stubborn and confrontational. People tend to avoid talking to him," Lo Tun Suong said, "but he's still good at his job." Tio Ma chimed in. "Tong Sun Kwang's leg was fine before, but 3 years ago, he had a traffic accident and injured one leg. He's here." Tio Ma suddenly pointed out the window. A man in uniform, limping, was walking in. We quickly went to intercept him. When he saw us, he hesitated for a moment, then bowed his head and continued walking in. Lo Tun Suong called out, "Tong Sun Kwang, we're from the police department. We need to ask you some questions." He stopped. I stepped forward to block any attempt to escape. I grabbed his wrist and pressed down on his shoulder. Tong Sun Kwang exclaimed, "Oh!" I pulled down his shirt, removing the bandage on his shoulder. A bruise in the shape of an oval suddenly appeared before my eyes. I thought to myself, "It's him. It must be him. Tong Sun Kwang. Please come with us." To our surprise, Tong Sun Kwang remained calm, without any struggle or resistance. Back at the office, I hurried to the file room. Finally, I found Tong Sun Kwang's medical report from 3 years ago, buried in a stack of thick files. The report described, on Donghai Street, Taeho District, when Tong Sun Kwang was riding his motorcycle from north to south towards Tielngo Village, he collided with Lum Tiofeng, who was turning left. Both were injured. Tong Sun Kwang suffered a fracture in his left ankle, classified as a minor injury. Prompted by curiosity, I found Lum Tiofeng's medical report, which stated, Lum Tiofeng suffered a spinal injury resulting in dysfunction of the spinal cord, classified as a severe injury. Both medical reports were signed by Dr. Trio. It can be seen that in this traffic accident, Tong Sun Kwang was relatively less responsible and had minor injuries. Meanwhile, Lum Tiufeng bore more responsibility and suffered more severe injuries. Just as I was putting the documents back into the file cabinet, I received a call from Dr. Tu at the city police department. He informed me that the DNA results were in. The bloodstains at the crime scene, blood on the car floor, and the hair found on Dr. Trio's body all matched those of another man. In the interrogation room, I saw him sitting with his head bowed, not saying a word. Tong Sun Kwang, don't you want to say anything? Captain Lee spoke seriously. He looked up at Captain Lee for a moment, then bowed his head again, refusing to speak. Captain Lee's eyes showed frustration. I said to Tong Sun Kwang, don't you want to tell us how your leg got injured? After asking, I quietly observed, and his lips trembled slightly. The silence and quiet atmosphere lasted for a few minutes. Then Tong Sun Kwang suddenly broke the silence, sighing. I've been holding this inside for a long time. It's complicated. Of course, I have to speak up, otherwise you'll think I'm unreasonable. I didn't even think about leaving when I came in here today. In that traffic accident 2 years ago, I was just driving normally. That guy turned left and crashed into me. Do you think I'm at fault in this? I poured a glass of water and placed it in front of him. Don't rush. Drink some water, and then tell us slowly. Tong Sun Kwang, with his hands cuffed to the chair, bowed his head and took a few sips. When that happened, I was thrown meters away and couldn't get up. The motorcycle was wrecked. The guy at first seemed fine, then also lay on the ground, unable to get up. Was he pretending? I went to see Dr. Trio for an examination. He said my injuries weren't serious. I heard how the other guy's examination turned into severe injuries. This can't just be ignored, so I went to see Dr. Trio again. I put an envelope on his desk and begged him to change the examination result. Unexpectedly, he threw the envelope on the ground and kicked me out. It's like pushing someone to the edge, only lacking the need to kneel down in front of him. I know he's not wealthy, but I truly don't have money. Even my leg injury, I couldn't afford surgery for. Then I thought about how the other guy isn't much of a man anymore, so I decided to let it go. But how come I heard he had a child last year? Isn't that doctor's examination fraudulent? Do you think I'm wrongly paying? If the other person was more seriously injured, would I have to compensate? The examination of injuries and compensation are not directly related, I questioned. It seems he even examined another injury, but regardless, this all points to Dr. Trio's bias. I suddenly understood everything. Tong Sun Kwang must have misunderstood Dr. Trio. Our forensic doctor only assessed injuries, not determining the rate of disability. Surely, he blamed everything on him. Furthermore, aggressive treatment after injury greatly affects recovery. Tong Sun Kwang only had a fractured ankle. If treated aggressively, there would surely be no disability, whereas the other person must have continued treatment afterward, hence the improvement. I shook my head and said to Tong Sun Kwang, keep going. I worked hard to earn money. Most of it had to go to Lum's family. My wife started nagging all day, and the kids ignored me. I felt life was in a deadlock. That night, a friend invited me for drinks. I had some. When I went to the bathroom, I heard someone humming, a familiar voice. I looked up. Oh, isn't that Dr. Trieu? He seemed happy and didn't recognize me. Anger surged when I thought about how he ruined me like this. I needed to do something to vent. I returned to the workshop, removed the license plate from the old wrecked van, drove it to the hotel gate. After Dr. Trio left the hotel, I followed behind. Following a dark stretch, I stepped on the gas. I originally just wanted to punch him, but thought my leg might not keep up. What if I couldn't run away after? And I might not even win, so I decided to just ram into Dr. Trio. He lay motionless on the ground. I dragged him into the van, planned to find a mountain crevice to dump his body to make him taste pain. But as I drove out of the city, he woke up, probably realized it was me, and asked what happened. I threatened to kill him. He wanted to open the car door but couldn't, probably due to the impact. Then suddenly my right shoulder hurt. I turned around and saw Dr. Trio biting me. My mind went blank, my body burning. I stopped the car and dragged him out, punched him, cursed him, but still felt unsatisfied. I ignored everything and ran him over. I wanted to go back but didn't have much gas, didn't dare go to a gas station, so decided to drive to the roadside near the field and take a taxi home. Tong Sun Kwang's confession essentially recreated the entire process of the case. Listening to it, I felt a chill run down my spine. Hatred and stupidity enough to make one lose reason, willing to destroy others and themselves. The grudge between Tong Sun Kwang and Dr. Trio stemmed from a traffic accident 3 years ago. Finally, it ended with a murder case disguised as a traffic accident. In this cycle, no one is the winner. Although Dr. Trio helped us find the real culprit, he will never be able to work and fight alongside us again. Over the years, I still often remember his voice and figure, but there are still some issues that puzzle me. I still can't imagine when Dr. Trio wrote the word mouth, before or after being hit by the car. What was his true intention in writing the word mouth? Maybe he wanted to hint to us that there's a clue in his mouth. Or maybe he was about to write the word kill to remind us of the killer's characteristic. But after mouth, there was no opportunity or no way to write further. Of course, he may have wanted to express something else. This mystery will never be solved.